Monday mornings at Nuvera always began with stale muffins and forced enthusiasm, but this time I arrived early. I even wore lipstick. 10 years of dedication had taught me not to expect anything, but this morning something felt different. There'd been murmurs last week about a strategic reward initiative for senior engineering leads. I didn't need a parade, just acknowledgement, maybe even a seat at the next leadership summit. The conference room buzzed with casual chatter as I slid into my usual spot, third seat, from the left, next to the window with the blurry tint. Devin, my manager, walked in 5 minutes late, as always, coffee in hand and ego intact. Behind him, Jules Rannick, the new hire. The one who'd somehow learned everyone's name in a week, worn designer sneakers to his first presentation, and called our back-end system cute. Across the table, someone whispered, "Bet it's about the Tesla." My pulse ticked. Devin cleared his throat. "All right, folks, big morning. As you know, Nuvera's future is built on innovation and bold ideas." His eyes skimmed right past me. "And we like to reward excellence. That's why we're proud to announce our rising star, Jules Rannick, will be receiving a fully loaded Tesla Model S Plaid courtesy of the executive board." A burst of applause. Someone actually stood to clap. Jules did that humble headshake people do when they're pretending not to enjoy it. "Wow, this means a lot," he said, grinning like he'd just landed on Mars. I blinked once, twice. Devin turned to me, still smirking. "You're okay with the bus, right, Avery's? You've always been the practical type." The room laughed, not cruelly, not maliciously, just lightly, casually, as if I were a backdrop, a fixture, like a lamp in the corner no one noticed anymore. I looked at Jules, all 6 weeks of him basking in his manufactured spotlight. I thought of the late nights, the prototypes, the models I'd trained through weekends, the core engine in our product suite that still ran on my old architecture. My name wasn't mentioned once. I smiled faintly and reached for my notepad. The meeting droned on, but I wasn't really listening anymore. Not to them. Not anymore. Something inside me had gone very, very still. I didn't say anything for the rest of the meeting. I sat through Devin's half-baked jokes, Jules' awkward attempt to pitch a product he clearly didn't understand, and the lifeless round of claps as we adjourned. No one looked at me when they left. I doubted they even noticed I stayed behind to erase the whiteboard. The ride home took 47 minutes. Bus transfers and all. The same route I'd been taking since year 2 at Nuvera when the company cut everyone's travel stipends during our funding drought. I'd sold my car to keep afloat and told myself it was temporary. It never was. The apartment was dark when I arrived. I didn't bother turning on the lights. My backpack dropped to the floor with a soft thud, and I walked straight to the closet in my home office. From the back shelf behind a box labeled 2018 tax docs, I pulled out the matte black case I hadn't opened in nearly a year. Thornmine, the label, read handwritten in my own cautious script. I laid it on my desk and paused. My fingers hovered over the zipper, uncertain for the first time in years. Then I opened it. Inside a 4T by external drive, a few worn notebooks, and a USB key that held a different kind of history. One not built in meetings or strategy decks, but over long nights fueled by silence and resentment. Thornmine wasn't a project, it was a sanctuary. It was the platform I built in secret, never finished, never shared. Part rebellion, part backup plan. I powered up my laptop and connected the drive. The welcome screen blinked once, then flooded open like a long, locked gate. Lines of dormant code lit up the display, neural intent parsing, predictive weight reshaping, contextual ethics training. The building blocks were crude, but the architecture was intact, ahead of its time, maybe too far. That's why I'd shelved it when Devin called it unfocused. I scrolled through the commit history, my own comments staring back like echoes from another life. The last one read, "If they ever push you out, build it your way." I closed the comment log and opened a new terminal window. By Wednesday, the company Slack was lit up with celebratory posts about Jules AI, a groundbreaking leap in applied machine learning. Devin called it in his morning announcement. Someone posted a photo of Jules standing under a Nuvera banner, arms crossed like a tech visionary, while Devin beamed beside him with that practiced PR grin. The blog post was worse. It credited Devin's mentorship and Jules' raw talent for building a predictive task engine designed to optimize high-load training environments. But the moment I saw the architecture diagram they'd included, my stomach turned cold. I'd drawn that structure by hand, literally. Same flow, same abstracted task graph. 2 years ago, I'd proposed it under the name Soma. Devin told me it was too intellectual, that clients wouldn't understand it. He'd tossed the proposal aside without even a second meeting. And now here, it was rebranded and reborn, complete with a new name, new face, and none of my fingerprints. But it was mine. Every behavioral modifier, every decay parameter, even the recursive pruning heuristic, they hadn't even changed the logic, just the variable names. I sat at my desk, opened the archived Soma proposal, and compared it line by line with the white paper Devin had just linked in his Team Wins email. 90% overlap, minimum. No one had come to ask me to review it. No one had invited me to validate the model, because they knew. Or worse, they didn't think I'd notice. The noise around me kept rising. Applause, congratulations. Someone made a meme of Jules photoshopped onto Iron Man holding a glowing circuit core. I closed Slack without replying. They'd stolen my blueprint. They'd erased me from my own work. And somehow I wasn't angry. Not in the way I expected. It was quieter than that. Like watching someone move into a house you built with your own hands. I turned back to the Thornmine shell on my second screen. The core modules were already starting to align. I entered a new commit message. Let them have what they copied. I'll build what they can imagine. Then I kept typing. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not out of anxiety, but clarity. There was nothing left to wait for. I brewed coffee, opened the Thornmine drive, and began rewriting the kernel layer. The old framework was elegant but naive, too reliant on legacy systems I'd once been forced to accommodate. Now there were no meetings, no compliance check-ins, no team leads to explain things to. Just code, mine. At work, Devin launched a weekly innovation digest. Every issue featured Jules, a future thought leader, a visionary in multimodal architecture. Once Devin wrote, "This is the type of leadership our company was built to nurture." I kept the email. It might be useful later. Each night I coded after dinner. By midnight, the recursive learning agent was fully rewritten, modular, scalable, and for the first time, ethically constraint-aware. Thornmine didn't just predict behavior, it adapted to the intent behind it. I bought the domain name thornmindlabs.com, then filed for provisional patents on the optimizer loop, the dynamic ethics tuner, and the signature compression algorithm I developed in grad school but never released. By the end of the week, I had a logo, just text, minimalist, sharp lines. Over the weekend, I registered the LLC in Delaware. I knew the process from helping a former colleague do it for his crypto scam years ago. He'd made 30 grand before the site even launched. I planned to last a little longer. On Monday, Devin passed my desk with Jules in tow and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Some people are just built to stay behind the scenes." Jules laughed, not cruelly, just comfortably. I nodded without looking up. My server was processing the first internal test of Thornmine's neural patching system. 0 crashes, memory stable, results coherent, no fanfare, no applause, no company Tesla. That night, I bought a burner laptop, clean system, no residual Nuvera logins. I wasn't just building a new model anymore. I was building an exit. It happened on a Tuesday. I was halfway through refactoring Thornmine's recursive calibration loop when the HR ping came in subject line quick sync. That was corporate speak for something unpleasant. Devin didn't even show up. It was just me, a polite woman named Marlene from People Operations, and a thin man I didn't recognize from legal. "We're undergoing structural realignment," Marlene said with a practiced calm. "Unfortunately, your role has been impacted. Impacted. Not eliminated, not erased, just impacted. Like weather." I asked if Devin had signed off on this. Marlene nodded. The man from legal pushed a severance packet across the table and began outlining my options, my non-disparagement clause, and the offer expiration date. "You'll be receiving 3 months severance and an additional month's healthcare continuation," Marlene added like a parting gift. My badge deactivated by noon. My Slack account vanished. My email pinged once more final confirmation of offboarding. Devin never wrote a single word. As I exited the building, Jules was in the lobby grinning into his phone. He didn't see me leave. It was raining as I boarded the 554 toward Capitol Hill. I sat in the back forehead against the glass, watching Seattle blur past in grayscale. But I wasn't sad. Not really. Not anymore. I thought of Devin's voice. "You're okay with the bus, right?" I thought of the rebranded Jules AI platform, of the unpaid overtime, the ignored proposals, the silence. Then I thought of Thornmind. That night, I locked my apartment door, opened the burner laptop, and deployed the beta to a closed dev community under an alias. No fanfare, no explanation, just the code and a minimal README file. Within 4 hours, the post had over 1,200 stars. By midnight, a thread on Hacker News was already calling Thornmind a quieter, smarter alternative to Jules AI. I pushed the first patch update at 1:17 a.m. By then, I'd already bought the second server. By Friday morning, Thornmind had 10,000 signups. The beta had spread faster than I imagined through niche forums, Discord servers, then GitHub trending. Someone uploaded a walkthrough video. Then someone else translated the README into Japanese and Portuguese. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table, still wearing the same sweatshirt I'd worn when I was let go. On day 3, a YouTuber with 1.2 million subscribers released a 10-minute demo titled, "Is Thornmind the Future of Ethical AI?" The video exploded. That night, Fast Company sent an interview request. The next morning, MIT AI Labs reached out with a collaboration proposal. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I restructured the license terms and released Thornmind under an open core model with enterprise features behind a lightweight subscription layer. I added token-based rate limits, security controls, and modular APIs. The documentation had its own dedicated wiki by Monday. Series A offers followed by Tuesday. By the end of the week, 4 VCs had offered me meetings. One tried to guess my identity over LinkedIn. He was wrong. I hired 5 remote engineers, all under aliases. One was a Ukrainian systems architect who built drone defense models. Another was a Brazilian data scientist who'd been blackballed for exposing workplace fraud. They didn't need offices or free kombucha, just trust and clean code. I paid them in crypto, weekly, ahead of schedule. The momentum didn't stop. Someone launched a fan subreddit. Someone else leaked a screenshot showing that Thornmind's output accuracy beat Jules AI by 34% under stress load. Reddit loved that. Investors noticed too. By the time I pushed version 0.9, Thornmind Labs had its first official enterprise customer, a mid-sized logistics company in Denver. Their CTO sent a 3-word email. Finally. Something stable. I replied using the alias, then tagged the invoice to the new billing system. As I reviewed server logs that night, I noticed something odd. 3 queries had come from a familiar IP block, Nuvera. It started with silence, then delays, then apologies. Within 2 weeks, Nuvera's client success team began flagging reports Jules AI was underperforming, poor scaling under variable load, inconsistent predictive accuracy, bugs in the ethics module, ironically the same block I'd warned them about last year. Clients began slipping away. Slowly at first, then in clusters, I saw the pattern unfold from a safe distance. Someone on LinkedIn posted about switching to a faster, leaner system, built by people who know what they're doing. The post didn't name Thornmind, but the comments did. At Nuvera, Devin kept smiling. He hosted webinars, quoted fake adoption metrics, reposted Jules' photo with some recycled hashtags. But numbers don't lie, especially not to boards. That Thursday, the Nuvera board received an acquisition offer from Thornmind Labs. It wasn't hostile. It was surgical. A simple email terms, clean valuation fair option to integrate rather than absorb. It was signed Avery's Alewin, founder and principal architect, Thornmind Labs. I imagine the room went quiet. The next morning, I got a LinkedIn message from a board member I hadn't heard from in 3 years, would love to reconnect. Your timing is impeccable. Devin's name didn't appear anywhere in the thread, but later that afternoon I heard through an old contact in recruiting that he'd stammered through a board presentation, unable to answer why the company's core clients were abandoning their flagship product. The PR director emailed Thornmind's public inbox, requesting an interview with the woman behind the technology. I let it sit for 24 hours, then forwarded it to a ghost account tied to my lawyer. By Monday, I received an invitation for a closed-door leadership meeting with Nuvera's executive team. No agenda, no titles, just a name, mine. I accepted, and I chose the time 9:00 a.m. sharp. The glass door swung open at exactly 8:59 a.m. I stepped into the boardroom in a charcoal suit heels, silent on the polished floor. Devin looked up mid-sip and nearly dropped his coffee. Jules froze, lips parting just slightly like he'd seen a ghost. The rest of the room, half board members, half damage control, straightened in their seats as I crossed to the front of the table and placed my laptop down without a word. No one spoke, so I began. I projected a timeline across the wall. Code commit history, internal documentation, screenshots of the abandoned Soma project, each bearing my name and timestamp. Email chains requesting review, meeting notes where I was asked to let it go and focus on more realistic contributions. They watched in silence as I layered Jules AI's current production code side by side with my abandoned prototype, line by line. The overlap was undeniable. At minute 11, I paused. I turned toward Devin. He didn't meet my eyes. "You didn't just steal credit," I said evenly. "You wasted my time." Then I closed the laptop. The board chair cleared his throat, trying to recover his voice. "Miss Elowin, we were unaware, I know," I said. "That's why I came today, so you could be aware. They asked about Thornmind, about my team, about licensing. I answered every question plainly without embellishment or resentment. The data spoke for itself." Jules tried to interrupt once. I didn't even look at him. When it was over, the room stayed quiet for a beat too long. Then the CTO nodded and said, "Well, it's clear we've been building around the wrong center of gravity." They asked if I was open to discussion strategic partnership acquisition merger. I said I'd consider it. I wasn't there for revenge, just clarity. As I gathered my things, Devin finally spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell us what you were working on?" I looked at him. "You never asked." Then I walked out. By the time I reached the elevator, my inbox was already filling with new offers. By evening, The Verge ran the headline in bold, "Engineer fired over Tesla, gift now run startup poised to overtake former employer." TechCrunch followed an hour later, then Forbes. My inbox swelled with media requests, podcast invites, speaking opportunities. I answered none of them. The NASA deal closed before noon the next day. Thornmind would power their next-gen orbital simulation pipeline. I signed the agreement from my kitchen counter while drinking cold coffee and a t-shirt from a conference I once wasn't invited to. Time emailed that afternoon. I'd been selected for the next 100 under 40 list. They wanted to send a photographer. I sent them a preferred date and told them I'd bring my own clothes. The story wasn't just mine anymore. It had become its own current, shared in group chats, passed between developers, whispered in corner offices. Something about it rang universal. The overlooked building quietly and then, no longer waiting to be seen. At 5:42 p.m., I got a text. Devin, would you ever consider consulting for us? I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering above the screen. Then I typed, me consult your conscience. I didn't block his number. I didn't delete the thread. I just set the notification to silent. Thornmind's newest release version 1.0 dropped at midnight. 5 new modules, all stress-tested, all built from scratch, by a team that didn't ask for credit, just clarity. I pushed the release myself and left a final note in the changelog built in the margins. Launched on our terms. By morning, 5 more contracts were in negotiation. I'd opened a second hiring round. The office space in Fremont I once couldn't afford had just sent over a leasing agreement. I stood by the window and watched the sun edge over Lake Union soft and pale against the skyline. Then I turned off my phone and opened a clean terminal. The rooftop was quiet just before sunset. Soft strings played through hidden speakers, and the city below shimmered like it knew something was ending and something else was just beginning. I stood near the glass railing, a flute of champagne in hand, the breeze catching the edge of my blazer. My team was here. All 5 of them scattered in conversation, refilling their plates with appetizers they never thought they'd be able to afford. Rika, my systems lead, was laughing about something with Omar, who just moved into his first real apartment in years. None of them had come from the polished circles Devin used to worship. That was the point. My mother stood nearby, wrapped in a shawl she'd knitted herself, beaming. She'd flown in that morning from Portland, walked straight into my penthouse and said, "Told you, even when you were 12 and rewriting your calculator." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. As we gathered near the center of the deck, I raised my glass. "To the bus," I said, pausing to let the laughter ripple in the billion-dollar view it gave me. Everyone clinked glasses. Someone whooped. Omar bowed dramatically. The rooftop lights kicked on just as the sky darkened to deep violet. I checked my phone only once. Jules had posted a statement effective immediately he was stepping down from Nuvera to pursue independent initiatives. Devin's name trended on X for all the wrong reasons his internal emails had leaked. He was officially suspended pending investigation. I tucked the phone back into my coat pocket. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not exactly. It was clarity. The kind that comes not from proving anyone wrong, but from proving yourself right out loud and with a platform no one could take away this time. I turned back to my team, lifting my glass again. "Let's keep building," I said. They nodded one by one as the city lights rose all around us, glowing, steady, and finally within reach.